And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And today, on this Monday, February 27th, 2023, we got a special guest today. We have Mr. Nathan Cook, who is an amazing coach, international speaker, and facilitator who sees people where they are and helps them move forward towards what matters most in their life. He was recognized by world-renowned leadership expert John Maxwell as a coach and a speaker who values people and adds value to them. Whether working one-on-one with Nathan or listening to him in a crowd of thousands, his engaging personality will leave you feeling inspired, equipped, and motivated to be more than before. When working with clients, Nathan creates a confidential space to cut to the heart of problems and create solutions and plans to execute on and achieve the desired outcomes and goals. Most importantly, clients who work with Nathan learn to be more in tune with who they are at their core, which elevates their relationships, spiritual walk, business, physical, and mental health. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Hey, it's good to be here. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. Every show that you do, it just comes out, and then to start it out with all the fire. I don't know. It just makes things exciting.
Right. Got to start it with a bang. Got to start the week off with with a great show, and I'm excited to have you here today. As we were talking a little bit before, you come highly recommended with a great story and a great passion for helping others, and that's what this show is all about: is providing some inspiration, some motivation, telling some stories, and having a good time. So I'm looking forward to talking with you for this next hour. And for those of you that are watching live, or maybe you're watching on the replay, make sure to leave us some comments, ask questions, engage, and interact with us through this entire interview today. So Nathan, I would love to give you the opportunity just to get us started with telling us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. So grew up in Eugene, Oregon, which is home of the Oregon Ducks. It's funny because people, if I say the Oregon Duck football team, now people know who the Oregon Ducks are. If you were to say that, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, not a single person would know who they were. Right. But now my hometown is now recognized nationally, which is, I guess, kind of cool. So grew up in Eugene, and then through a number of different situations that happened in my life, I actually ended up here in Portland, Oregon, which is where I reside now. Went to Pacific University to get my, originally I was going to get my degree in physiology, being able to work with people and maybe injuries that they had. So more the physical therapy route. Mm-hmm. And then life hit. And I got derailed and tried to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And, it took a little bit of time, but with every single step that I took, it got me closer to where I am now. Isn't that funny? Mm-hmm. We hope at least that whatever step you're taking or you took in the past gets you to where you are now. Otherwise, you're not here anymore.
That's right.
But yeah, it's been a great journey. I never would have thought that I would be a coach or a speaker professionally. When a friend of mine told me about getting a career as a speaker, I looked at him and I thought, do people actually get paid to speak? I've never even heard of something like that before. And it truly has been a wild ride. Life is good. Like I said, residing here in Portland, Oregon, got 3 kids under 4, which is kind of crazy, and trying to keep them all alive from not harming one another or harming themselves. Jumping off the stairs and those kinds of things. Oh, yeah. It's a fun life.
Good stuff. Well, hey, it's funny. I lived for a very short period of time in Grants Pass, Oregon. So talk about not knowing where, if your city's on the map. I don't know if Grants Pass is even on the map yet, but I remember living there. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and such beautiful mountains and beautiful area. The only thing that for me, like I even remember, and I was still young, but like the rain. Here I am in California. I'm in California, and it's been raining for like weeks, and I'm like, when is it going to go away? And it's just a different, but beautiful, beautiful state. And my brother went to school there, played baseball there. So definitely spent some time up in that area. And then you were talking about, physical therapy. Super cool, because my son is actually graduating high school this year. He's 18 years old. And the path that he is looking towards is he's looking towards physical therapy. And, kind of a little backstory on that is that he had a dislocated shoulder. and then he dislocated it again. So he had several physical therapy sessions, and he was meeting with his trainer, and so the person that actually helped him out was someone I went to high school with, and they got to talking, and he got real kind of excited about it. And my son's very passionate about martial arts and jujitsu and MMA and kind of in that realm. And, but he wants to be on both sides, be able to do it and also be able to help others heal, since there've been so many that have helped him. So that's super cool. I'd love to talk more about that as we dive in. Where did you actually grow up? Where are you originally from?
Eugene, Oregon.
You're from, so you grew up there your whole life.
I am born, raised Oregonian. I'm one of the few people that you'll probably meet that actually have only lived in one place in the world.
Yeah.
That could be a good thing and a bad thing. It's funny because when I went up to college here at Pacific University, I kept thinking to myself, well, like there's only two places in the world. There's this place evidently in Forest Grove, Oregon, and there's Eugene. I didn't even know about Portland. And so it's funny because as a kid, unless you're told that there is a bigger world out there, you don't see a bigger world. You only see the world that's shown to you. And there's good pieces to that. There's benefits, but there's also downsides to that. A little bit more of a controlled environment to raise your kids, at least the environment that I was in. But at the same time, it's funny because, when I went off to college, I still remember my mother to this day messaging me 6 months into my college career saying, "Are you alive? We haven't heard from you." And I have to be honest, when I got the message, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had oh yeah, I forgot about this other life that I used to have way back in Eugene. Because wherever I am, that's where I am. Like I'm fully 100% present there.
Right. Yeah. Talk about living and being in one spot for, the majority of your life. Aside from the time that I lived in Grants Pass, Oregon, I have lived in Ventura County, California, Southern California, my entire life. Fortunately, I've been able to travel due to, different jobs that I've had, or as a consultant, as a speaker, and, kind of get to see other places. But you're right. When you're in that bubble, so to speak, you just kind of stick in there. And recently my parents moved to Utah. My brother, you moved to Idaho, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I get a call every now and again. How's everything going? How you doing? I'm like, oh yeah. How are you? Right?
I forgot I have relatives.
Not that I forgot, but you kind of get in your schedule of like kind of going through your daily routine, and that's just kind of outside the norm. But so talk about school, younger years. Did you play sports? Were you involved in activities? What kinds of things did you like to do growing up?
Pretty much everything outdoors. I like to think that I was born in kind of the wrong genre, mainly because, I grew up like most kids my age weren't like sent outside for long periods of time, like kind of probably of an older generation that would say, oh yeah, our parents kicked us out of the house and said, come back before it was, getting dark.
Right.
My parents would kick us out. We just had a yard that we had to stay in. So growing up, I did a lot of physical activities. I loved sports. I pretty much have done numerous sports, and I'm multifaceted, and I love different sports because they challenge you in different ways. From soccer when I was a kid, to baseball, to fencing. Martial arts definitely took up the largest portion of my life for over 20 years of doing that with traditional Okinawan karate. And, now I'm getting into the swimming world, which is really crazy. Not like, the breaststroke or anything like that. But I do some training with a company called Deep End Fitness, and essentially some former Marines developed this fitness program where you are doing essentially CrossFit under the water. So take some barbells, take some weights, get down to the bottom of the pool, do some exercise, walk across the pool. Like it's intense stuff. But it's as being a martial artist yourself, it's mind over matter, right? That's half of life is taming the body, and taming the mind. And most people can tame the body, but they can't tame this real estate between both of their ears.
Mm-hmm.
And so, martial arts definitely set me up for a long period of time, because of the discipline, because of those things. It's funny because as I'm thinking of all the sports that I did, I'm like, man, I forgot about, I was just thinking I was a wrestler for like 4 years. You kind of just, you do different things. I still remember my wrestling coach at one point. It was my sophomore year of high school, and he said, Nathan, if you're playing basketball, you're a basketball player. You're not a wrestler. If you're a martial artist, you're a martial artist. And I've kind of taken on that persona with everything that I do, is that if you're going to get into something, you become that. Mm-hmm. It's not that you forego everything from the past, but you bring all that together to really culminate and have an enriching experience. Because the more that you learn about a specific sport, like wrestling, like martial arts, you can take that over either into business, you can take that into your personal life, you can take that into your marriage. Life is multifaceted, and I think it was meant to be lived in amalgamized way, bringing it all together. And so that's what I really love. What I get to do nowadays is I get to live pretty much any aspect of life that I want. If I find an interest, I don't just kind of play around it. I dive in deep into it. Mm-hmm. And then I come in and I come out as a richer person because I've experienced the depth of what that experience has to offer.
Now, as you're saying that, it reminds me a lot about myself, in that if I'm going to do something, I'm like all in. I can't, it's very hard for me to dabble. Right. I just over the years, whether it's martial arts, whether now it's the podcast. A question I have regarding that is, how do you explain to people, or how do you describe it to people when they may think that having that type of mindset might be obsessive or might be, over the top, right?
Yeah. I think it's a passion. When you have a passion to move towards something, towards learning, really, that's what it is. It's a passion towards learning. And if you don't have a passion towards learning, very quickly you're going to stagnate and you're going to fall off in whatever you do in life. Mm-hmm. And you'll lose the hunger. You'll lose the hunger to not just, do your business and to, have a family. You kind of lose the fire for living. It kind of reminds me recently, within the last year or two, I told my wife when we first got married, I was going to buy her an espresso machine. And she had told me, I used to be a barista when I was in high school. And I thought, oh yeah, this will be great. I'm going to have my own personal barista at home. And so, a little over a year ago, I went out and I started researching, and I'm thinking these things are massively expensive, like stupid expensive for one of these machines. And so I bit the bullet. I got her a really nice machine. It got shipped to the house. I was going to give it to her for Christmas, and I couldn't actually keep it in the garage because it came on a pallet. It was like 700 pounds on this pallet. And I was like, well, she's just going to have to find out early what I got her. So I took it upstairs. I set it all up. And then when she came home, she walked into the kitchen, saw this thing, and she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to learn how to use it. And I was like, wait a second, learn to use it. You told me that you could use it. And all of a sudden now I'm left with, I can wait for my wife to learn how to use it and make me a coffee, or I can just make myself a coffee and learn how to do it. And I started to fall in love with the process. I started learning how to dial in the espresso beans. I started learning about, what kind of beans from different cultures of the world would actually be best to be able to use in an espresso. And then you start looking at milk. Like I've watched probably 20 hours. I'm not even lying. 20 hours of videos of how to froth the perfect milk. But as you know, there's a desire to learn. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you have that desire to learn, and it's not a perfectionist mentality, I don't believe I'm perfect. I'll never be perfect, but there's an excellence to it. So my son had a birthday party yesterday. We had everyone over, and I'm behind the coffee machine. I'm making lattes and cappuccinos for everyone at the party. And I know that I'm doing a good job when someone says, "Wow, this is one of the best coffees I've ever had." And I don't do that to toot my horn. I do that because I'm looking for that wow moment. I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for that wow opportunity to share, to help someone experience something that they've never experienced before. And so no matter what you do, you want to do it to the best of your ability. You know, for me, in my faith, the best of my ability is serving God. It's doing the best that I can with the gifts and the talents that I've been given. And when I 100% show up in whatever I'm doing, whether that's, driving my car down the road and not being the crazy person. We just had snow, so we have lots of crazy people in snow
Right.
here in Oregon.
Yeah. We
or
have crazy
or
people in
whether
California, but it has nothing to do with the snow.
or whether that's my daughter started gymnastics a few years ago. Never been a gymnast. My wife was a gymnast, and then all of a sudden I started looking into the world of gymnastics. What does my daughter need to know? What are some of the basic things? I'm learning the moves. Now, can I get on a floor, and do like a floor routine or get on bars? Absolutely not. I mean, it might be funny to watch. But at the end of the day, there's something about taking an interest in life. We all have opportunities in our life that will grow and round us out to be able to connect more with other people. When you asked me to come on the show and I started looking up the show and looking up your background, I'm like, oh, martial arts, like, oh yeah, like we've got some similar mentality here. I get this kind of stuff. And the more you get to know people, the more you know their background, and the more commonality that you can create, the better relationship that you can have with that person. And in my life, I believe that if you want to make an effect, if you want to make a big splash in the world, you have to connect with people. You have to meet them where you are, or meet them where they are. You have to go to them. And what better way to go to them than falling in love with something that maybe that no one else has ever had an interest in? I find it funny that we try to stick so much in our lanes and we never venture out to see what the rest of the world is doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love everything about what you just said, how you answered that question, because I'm listening and thinking, and you struck a chord when you started talking about martial arts. So we're going to have to talk a little bit more about that and about wrestling. But, I'm thinking about my students, and I'm thinking about my martial arts school, and I'm thinking about when you said passion and the desire to learn more. When you stop wanting to learn more is when you're just kind of moving on to the next thing. But when you get so engaged and so involved with, in martial arts, learning more forms, learning more techniques, learning how to teach,
Yeah.
learning how to be a better teacher, learning how to be, a good coach. We just attended a tournament over this last weekend, and it's been a little while since we've been, at a higher level of competition. And I was talking to some of the parents who their children had, that they are competing for the first time on a national level, very high level. And I'm just kind of wondering, what their experience is. And I think everybody had a different experience, but one family in particular is like, well, we can't wait to go to the next tournament. And they're asking questions and they're learning more about it. And you see this renewed passion for something that they already do growing more and more. And that just made me really excited for them, because it's like, okay, cool. This is going to keep them on the path just a little bit longer, keep them just a little bit more excited, keep reaching for just a little bit more. And I think that's, some people are afraid to even start that process because they're afraid of how much they're going to get into it, or because they're already, like you said, they're staying in their own lane. I'm already here. I've already got this. This is what I know. This is what I'm comfortable doing. Going over there is going to be uncomfortable. Changing direction is going to be very hard.
Well, and I think, what's interesting is most people, when we're young, we have this desire to learn. We just want to learn things. Like, it's funny because, before we jumped on, I was telling you, I've been working in my office and, unplugging things and doing this and that. And my son was down here just a little bit ago and he said, Dad, can we watch a movie? And I said, no, Dad's working right now. He said, well, why? And I'm thinking, well, because I love doing this. I love trying to figure out different ways to improve all of these different aspects. But as a child, he looks at everything with that question of why and how, so he just turned 2 within the last week. And I still remember him as a little kid, like 1 year old, sitting up and staring at the door hinges in awe, like, wow, look how they just kind of swing. And he would sit there for 10, 15 minutes just staring at the hinges on the door. Now, don't be drawing your own conclusions about the, intelligence of my child for, staring at the hinges. I will tell you this, he has this desire to learn. And here's what happens is as we get older, we lose that desire to learn. We lose that desire to grow because we think, oh yeah, well, I've got that. I've got that. Growing up in the martial arts world, until you get to black belt, and when I say black belt, I mean, until you get into like the first couple of years of being a black belt, you don't really understand all of the color belts. You don't understand those beginning processes. Mm-hmm. And it was explained really well to me by a Japanese master once that all the way up until black belt, you're learning the basics. And when you hit black belt, think of it this way. White, you're like -10. Yellow, -9. Yeah, you're in the negatives. And then when you get to black belt, now you're at 0. Now we can do something with you now that we've taught you the basics. Now we can do fun things. And you're thinking, well, I thought the fun stuff was everything that we did, in karate class, kicking and punching and throwing and all. Like, yeah, those are fun. But now, because you have the basics, now we can start to explore and we can modify and we can play around with it. Mm-hmm. And as a black belt, if you get to that level, which very few people do, when you get to that level, your world changes. Everything that you look at changes. When you change the way that you see the world begins to change. And it truly happens when you start to master something and you start to look at everything with a beginner's mindset. This is just the basics. That if I take this, I can apply it over here. Like for me, my wife and I, we used to be wine connoisseur people. And when I say wine connoisseurs, we would taste them. Oh, I think I taste, blueberries or, cardamom. We weren't that great. But all of a sudden you start looking at different things like coffee, and coffee has those same type of principles of tasting and smelling, using your olfactory senses, and you're, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And then you break into tea and you're like, whoa, tea is this whole new world. If you like tea, like there's oolong tea and there's jade tea, and like you can go into these different worlds. But unless you have that beginner mindset in everything that you do, where you just want to learn, you're going to miss the opportunity to grow and expand. And here's the thing that I find with most people. Most people have been told since, the beginning years of their life that you need to decide right now what you want to be. And that's what you're going to be for the rest of your life. And they're never told, hey, you need to become the person that you want to live as for the rest of your life. Show up, love on people, care for people, work hard, be dedicated to whatever you do. Instead of developing the person, we tell them to go after something. Mm-hmm. Go after medical school, go after the black belt, go after graduating high school, graduating college, go get, a CPA job. And we tell them these things to achieve. And then we never really tell them who to be along the way. And what's funny is I thought I knew what I wanted in life. And as I got closer to getting it, I realized it wasn't what I really wanted. And as I continued to follow who I was as a person, as someone who loves other people and who's a natural encourager, who likes to learn, as I started to follow that path, all of a sudden new paths opened up to me, realizing, okay, this is actually where I need to be. This is what I need to do. I'm not like other people. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't have curated this path even if I wanted to. It's just a matter of showing up every single day as the person you were created to be and giving all glory to your creator for for what you have, right? So it kind of all comes back to this piece of, I think there's basics that we all want to learn, or that we all should learn, and we should never get complacent with those basics. We need to go back, keep sharpening. It's if you've ever broken a board or thrown a punch, it only takes a month of taking a small break, of coming back, and you're like, oh man, I've lost it all. Right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't take long to lose that razor's edge. You got
That's
to
right.
keep sharpening, keep honing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, if you're watching this live, you are. I'm enjoying this so much already. Just listening to this thought process, and just all the detail that you're going into as you're talking. I'm enjoying it a lot, and I want to thank Juanita for being on today. Juanita is always helping us and supporting us here. And make sure you guys go check out her podcast, Meticulous Moments. And I can't help. I got to ask more about karate. I love everything we've talked about so far. I'm loving listening, but I want to know more about your karate experience. When did you start training in martial arts? When did you earn your black belt? How did you start martial arts? Give me the lowdown on that.
Yeah. So I wanted to start martial arts. So I was homeschooled growing up, all the way up until high school. And we would have these programs that you could do to learn different things. So there was like a martial arts class that you could take, or there's fencing classes and pottery and all those fun things. And I remember I was in fencing at the time, and I said, Mom, I want to do karate, because all my friends were doing karate, but all my friends were older. My mother said, no, you're not old enough. Maybe next year. And I was like, oh man. And so the year came where I was eligible to go, and I was like, Mom, I want to do it. So she signed me up, and my mother was not like, I was born, raised, very conservative Christian. So anything with mysticism and all those kinds of things, my parents were not on board with. And so they did their research and ended up getting into this martial arts school, and the owners were Christians, and they did a lot of koans and teachings and principles, and their main focus was focused on growing the person. It wasn't just the techniques. They understood karate do. If you're familiar with martial arts, karate, empty hand, way of the empty hand, and do is the way, the life. It's how you live. And so we focused a lot on do, karate do. And so from that, truly it was a hard road. I loved it. My parents would say Nathan had anger issues growing up. I definitely was that kid. I had a lot of energy. I had a lot of frustration to get out, not because I had a hard life by any means. I had a great family, and I had siblings that were great. Maybe my sisters teased me a little bit. Maybe that's where the frustration and anger came from. I was never bullied or picked on or anything like that. That would have been coming from my family, because I was homeschooled. But training really took over my life. I lived, breathed, ate training. And so I started at 9 years old, my martial arts journey. 5 years after starting, I received my Shodan Ho, which is half of a degree for black belt. And then, so within Shudokan, you get your half degree, and then you wait a year. And then after a year, you have another test. And at that test, it's very interesting. Like, there's a physical test that you do all of these things. And then you sit down, and then all the black belts in the school circle around you, and they all give testament to your character of whether or not I deserve to be a full black belt. And it's a very interesting concept. So you have the physicality of it, and then all of a sudden now you have this mental, moral character aspect of it, of will you do us proud by getting a black belt? We want to make sure that you're not going to go down and, start beating up people, putting yourself in a bad situation, because that's not what martial arts is. Martial arts isn't finding trouble. It's deterring trouble from areas of your life. And so I got my Shodan Ho off. So I got my Shodan. And then I went all the way up until my third degree of black belt. But there's an interesting piece within my story that I never really knew until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was talking with my mother, and she said, "Yeah, you were a brown belt and you wanted to quit." I didn't remember this at all. And she said, "Yeah, you wanted to quit, and we had just paid for your tuition for the next 3 months." And I said, "No, you're gonna continue doing it, and then after that you can quit." And so, in that moment where I wanted to quit, I wasn't allowed to quit. If you're a parent, I hope you're capturing this right now. And I wasn't allowed to quit, and my parents continued to force me to go and train, and I fell in love with it again. I renewed the fire, the spirit within me to continue to train. And so rather than stopping at my third degree of brown belt, I continued on until my third degree of black, which opened up, many doors of opportunity of teaching, of competing, on national levels. And it's martial arts is one of those things that it truly changes the way that you live life, especially if you have a really good teacher and a really good school. It's not just about the kicking, punching, hitting, throwing people. Like, that's fun as guys. My wife looks at me strange whenever I'm like, "Oh, there's just nothing like getting a good punch, an elbow to the," and she's just like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, there's a camaraderie to it. Like, if you've wrestled on a mat, like whether it's wrestling or whether you've done judo and you're throwing each other, or aikido, and there's something about in that physical space with someone that there's a kindred bond that you get. And it like, even the look on your face right now, like you get
listen, there's nowhere else that you can punch someone in the face and hug each other after and be like, "Hey, thanks for that." You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was a really good shot. I didn't see that one coming. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I competed. So our school was interesting because you could not compete until you were a black belt. They would not let you compete. And so my first competition was as a black belt, and it was awful. like it was bad. Like, everyone, I got one medal, and that was because it was Team Kata, and we were the only ones. Everyone, if I remember correctly, I went into my sparring division, my fighting division, and the person I was up against first was someone from my school who I sparred with often. And everyone who's ever been in that situation knows it's the worst situation in the world, especially when the other person can beat you every time, because you're like, why did I even drive 6-7 hours to come up here and compete when I know I'm just going to be out after this. And so my first experience with competition was brutal, and it was brutal. But the interesting thing is our coach, our sensei, every single time that we would drive home, we would be in this van on this long car ride home, and he would go to every single person and he would ask them, "Well, what did you learn? What was your takeaway?" And I hated that. What am I supposed to take? I lost. I was awful. But what was interesting is I came back the very next tournament, and he equipped me with basics to actually win. And he showed me one move that I used through my entire fighting career. But on I guess it would be my second tournament, it was literally block and counterpunch. That was it. That's the only thing he gave me. And I was like, "Yeah, but everyone else is doing kicks and these fun things. Like, let's do those things." He's like, "No, that's the only thing you do." Like, "Yeah, but what if they don't attack me?" "No, you don't attack first. You wait for them, and when they punch, then you can counterattack." And I still remember this day going through, like, cleaning my division, and then you have this all-around competition at the end where you take the best fighters from every division, you put them all together, and you say, "Okay, you guys all get to fight now, and whoever wins is the grand champion of the entire tournament." And if I remember, I think I was 14 years old when that happened, and I was elated. but it was hard in the fact that I had to stick with the basics. Everyone else wanted me to do these other things, and it was just sticking with the process, with the routine that was given to me. And yeah, it didn't always work out really well, that process. I got knocked out unconscious on the floor once on that second tournament because evidently you can't really block a roundhouse kick very well to the head. you kind of gotta get out of it. But all that to say, I think there really is something to my journey and most people that have done a really hard sport. Like football players have a hard sport sometimes. Wrestlers, we always joke about, football players would always come to wrestling so they could condition and get ready for their season.
That's right. That's the truth. Very true.
It's true. But with every hard thing that you do in life, the more you stick with it, the better it becomes. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It will most likely suck a lot of the time. But you'll grow from it. You'll develop from it.
Yeah.
When I'm going to do a workout with a good buddy of mine who's he's a former Marine, we do these insane workouts that no human being should ever do. And I'll ask him like, "Hey, what are we doing today?" He's like, "Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be so fun." And I know,
and you know what that means.
I know what it means. And I still remember one time it was, it was right after Thanksgiving, a Thanksgiving meal. And we were in the gym working out and we were doing some really hard stuff. And I just couldn't, we were walking dumbbells across the floor in push-up position. And he gave me like 35, 40 pound weights. And I just don't know. That's not what I'm doing here. And I remember being on the floor like, oh, I just can't do this in my head. And I hear him say, find a way to negotiate with your body and make it happen. And I'm like, yes, sir. Right. But that's really what life is. Life is about challenging your body. And I think that when you lose the challenge, when you lose the desire to grow and improve and to continue that excellence path, then you kind of start to fall off the deep end. Now we have, a gut and we're going, well, maybe I'll just click one more Netflix program, or I don't really want to go outside. I'm just going to stay inside, for a couple more hours. And it's those compromises that we make to sharpening ourselves, to living life with excellence. It's those compromises that eventually take us off course with where we should be.
Mm-hmm. Less Netflix, damn it.
I hear you. It's really hard.
This is why I go to the gym in the first thing in the morning, because I know that I did it and I got it done. But I'm glad we talked about martial arts a little bit because, Juanita's watching and she had mentioned in a comment that she uses martial arts principles in her business. And a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, whether it's martial arts or life or business or parenting, right? You brought up a lot of points, a lot of stuff when it comes to martial arts that I, as a school owner and friends of mine who own schools, we constantly preach this on the show, and you just did it all for me. So I'm just happy to hear it being reinforced. But that whole story about how, you wanted to quit at brown belt, and it was, it's just one of those things. Mom said, I just paid for 3 months. You're not quitting. It wasn't, it was probably, more that she knew that you were going to get more out of martial arts. But, sometimes it's just that one thing. I mean, it was because she just paid for 3 months of martial arts that you had to push through, and you weren't given the opportunity to quit. And I find sometimes, we as martial arts instructors struggle with that because parents are so easy to allow them to quit or allow them to give up because, we'll do this instead. This is too hard, so let's go over here. But then guess what? That gets too hard too. And then we quit. And then just as much as winning becomes a habit, so does quitting, right?
Yeah.
And that's just, it's hard sometimes to be able to explain that to a parent, because they look at me and say, well, you just want us to pay our tuition. And that's part of it because that's how I live. But the other part of it is,
that's how the school stays open.
That's right. But the other part of it is, I know what your child could be capable of. I know what benefits if you stick with this, all the things that you were talking about. I know that if you stick with it, you're going to benefit from that. We just, again, a student of mine trained at another martial arts school. And this is really sad because the martial arts school that he trained at when he first started told him that in so many words that he wasn't coachable or that he wasn't going to be good at karate. And so they got discouraged and didn't train in martial arts for a little while. And finally, I met up with them and kind of talked him into it. And now this child is going to national tournaments, won first place this weekend, is excelling and exceeding. And I think it's because he was given a chance to do it, number one, and he was also supported by parents seeing what he could do and what he could accomplish. And I just think that that's such an important part to talk about. There's so many things that we could continue with martial arts, but again, as Juanita said, personal and professional development is a lifelong journey, right? Martial arts is, you talked about the way, right? And it being a lifestyle. It's really hard to get, let me just say, like Western culture to understand that, because most people are just like, okay, karate's while we're not doing baseball, or karate's when we have time, but when you really get into it, that martial arts is a way of life. It is a lifelong journey. And what you don't use, you lose, right? You said it, right? When you take a break from karate or anything else, you train for 3 years, earn a black belt, you take a break for a week, and you're like, what the hell happened? I'm losing. I'm losing already. Like 3 years is gone, and not gone, but you know what I mean? It starts same thing with the gym. You go to the gym and you're getting a solid workout, every day, getting in great shape, go for a year, you take a week off and you're like, oh, what happened? It all goes back to that process that you talked about of being passionate and learning, right? If we're only focused on getting the black belt, or we're only focused on getting in shape, and you stop there, you're going to lose everything you have gained along the way, rather than, what are your habits? What are your habits on a daily, and keeping that up? That's very hard for people to do and very hard for people to see.
Yeah, and I think another thing too, passion's important. Learning, having that beginner's mindset is important. I think another thing that's really important is standards, and I think we all live in a world where standards are so low, and you can attest to this. As a martial arts owner, school owner, the biggest problem in our society today, in my opinion, is that we have lowered our standards for our kids. Massively lowered our standards. Now, that doesn't mean that if a child isn't excelling, you kind of like your student that you were talking about that's doing so well now, the person gave up on them. They didn't try to actually coach them in a way that they would receive coaching. So teachers need to have standards, but they also need to be able to alter the course to achieve the standards. And that's one of the things that I always prided myself on as a martial arts teacher for teaching. When I was teaching, I was the hardest student in our school. I prided myself on that. Like I would have kids from other classes come into my classes and they would be crying on the side of the wall. And they would, I'm like, well, you're not listening. Go do push-ups. Go do 50 push-ups. Go do 100 push-ups. Go do this before you come into class. Oh, you're 5 minutes late. Okay, well, here's what you need to do. Here's the warm-up, and here's the penalty, for coming in late. And parents would just look at me like aghast, like, I can't believe, like, I'm the one that was late. Like, it's not their fault. And I was like,
how dare you?
I'm teaching your child a very, very, very good lesson right now. It doesn't matter who's late. You still pay the penalty. If you're late for work, your boss doesn't care if, there was a pile up on the road. You should have left early enough, whether or not now, if, you're in Oregon and, the snow comes down and everyone decides to abandon their cars on the side of the road. Like, yeah, maybe that's not really your fault. That goes to another thing, but standards are so important. There's one particular student I remember very, very vividly. His name was Drew, and Drew had cerebral palsy, and Drew had a hard time walking at times. He had to get cortisone shots. And Drew would come into class. He had the greatest demeanor. He was always happy. And there was one time that he came into class late. And I gave him push-ups for coming into class late. And everyone in the class was shocked. I can't believe you gave him push-ups. And I'm like, the penalty is the same for everyone. And then it continued to move forward as I was training. I was hard but loving on him. He progressed so well. I still remember the day where he came into class and he was a little bit late, and I was like, okay, yeah, do your 25 push-ups. And he's like, well, Sensei, can I do 100? And I was like, you want to do 100 push-ups? Yeah, I want to do 100 push-ups. I was like, well, how about this? You do your 25, and then at the end of class, before you can leave, you have to do the rest. You have to do 75 at the end. Okay, Sensei. Hi, Sensei. So, like, he fell in love with this process of challenging his body to the point that in high school, I learned later that he actually went and started playing football. And he was a really good football player. And I wonder in the back of my head, if I hadn't challenged him, if he would have gone for that. Maybe his parents would have, but I had a small moment in his life where I could make an impact, where I could challenge him. And as teachers, whether that's a physical teacher of, a physical exercise, or whether that's a mental teacher, of challenging your kids or challenging the people around you, whatever standards you place before someone, those are the standards that they're going to hit. Those are the standards that they're going to meet. And so if you've got people in your life and you're going, man, they just aren't performing, they're not very good, they're just not showing up to par, it's most likely you haven't set a good standard for them. You haven't set an opportunity for them to grow. And I find that really sad in our world, because we're okay with complacency. We're okay with people just going, yeah, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I mean, that's what we're taught, to do, the bare minimum. We're not taught to go the extra mile.
Right.
And the extra mile, as we know, is the road that's less trialed. It's that last mile. Very few people do it. But that last mile is the mile that actually sets you apart, that actually helps you to grow. If you go to the gym and you start working out and you're doing 10 reps, what's the rep that is the most valuable?
Number 10.
11.
11, yeah.
Right? Because everyone else is going and doing 10. And you got to be the one that says, oh, I'm going to do 11. I'm going to do 12. I'm going to do this specific thing that no one else is going to do. I'm going to set it out just a little bit different from everyone else, because I don't want to just fall into the crowd. I want to set myself apart. I think that's what's really interesting, is that if you have the passion, that's great. We have a lot of people that have passion. We have a lot of people that are learners nowadays, but I think that we have very few people that set high standards for themselves. Oh, I fail. I'm just not going to move forward. I'm going to give up. I don't look like that person. I can't do that. I didn't go to school. I'm not that smart. We all say those things in our life that discount and that take away from the standards of how we should be living with excellence.
Man, I agree with that. As soon as you started talking about standards, I perked up right away, because again, this was part of the discussion. This young man that performed really well over the weekend, because he was set up to succeed and given the challenge. I explained to his mom, I would love to see more of our students get involved and go to these tournaments and challenge themselves and compete a little bit more. I said, but the problem is that they're going to make an excuse because it costs too much money. It's too much effort. They have to go, they have to go somewhere else to do that. Most people are satisfied with the bare minimum, like you said. And I was just like, your child will now excel and have a higher level of success by going that extra mile. And I couldn't agree with all that more than what you said.
And something else, it's when you live by your standards, high standards, for long enough, you start to succeed. When you have a life of standards and discipline, you will start to succeed because you start to outlast other people. And it kind of reminds me of like my competition days. I was really good. Like I would place first in all of my fighting divisions because I was a really good fighter, but I didn't go to win the gold at one point. I started going because I would see people and I'd start telling them how they could become better. You know, we were always told in competing the martial arts, you don't just compete in one event. Like I knew people that would travel halfway across the nation and they would go and compete in sparring for one event, and that was it. And when we went to an event, you did sparring, you did kata, you did weapons, you did team kata, you do. If there was something that you could do, you signed up for it. If you could do the masters, if you were old enough to do masters, you did everything.
Right.
And what's interesting about all of this is at one point I forgot the competition piece and I just started the serving piece. And that's when the shift starts to happen in life, when you become so good at things that you start to help other people. When you have that passion, you learn, you have your standards, you perform with excellence, and now you can actually start to mentor other people. You can help other people not just get to where you are, but to allow them to stand on your shoulders to go somewhere where you've never been able to go. You know, I competed on a national level for a little while, but not that long. Many of my students after me competed well longer than I ever did in the national spotlight. And it was because I mentored. It was because I continued to encourage them. And it's not even just the people that were in my school. Like I would go to tournaments and I'd be watching kata, like the forms, like we're sitting down watching other people do their form and they get down and I would say, oh yeah, like maybe if you snapped your kick a little bit this way, or maybe your timing just, you know, not just 1, 1, 2, just go 1, 2, 1, you know, just a small little thing. And I'd be helping people craft and make their katas look better and stronger. And what's funny is all of a sudden people knew who I was. People loved being around me. They like, it wasn't because I was really good. I was, but it was because I cared enough to help other people become better. And I think that's just part of life. Like there's so many lessons, you know, kind of like what Anita was saying, like in karate, in martial arts, it's not just the physicality of it. You take everything that you do and you bring it out into the real world, the do, kind of what we were talking about. And you actually start to apply that to life, because everything in life, it molds and meshes together. We're not meant to have a private life and a public life. We're meant to have a life.
Yeah. Wow. Well, hey, I want to give a shout out to Dennis LaRue, who is watching, and he was commenting when you were talking about giving out the push-ups. I thought that was a fun one. Yeah, he'll do push-ups until I get tired. That was his comment. So thanks, Dennis, for watching. Appreciate him. Amazing guest as well. So if you guys haven't seen that podcast, go back and check out the episode with Dennis LaRue. And
Definitely.
you know, so you talked about that transition too of being a student, having that beginner mindset, wanting to learn. And it happened for me was that I loved martial arts so much that I started teaching martial arts. And I loved teaching martial arts so much that I started teaching people how to teach martial arts. And then I continued loving it and growing, and I would teach people to teach people to teach martial arts, right? And then it happened as a business consultant for martial arts schools. I loved learning about how to better my business. So I started teaching people how to better their business. And it's just this progression. And I think it always goes back to, like you said, that beginner's mindset, wanting to learn, but then also wanting to mentor. And, you know, that's the only way that you can even go up, right? The only way you can go up is to bring others up with you, right? And and the only way that we can accomplish anything big and worthwhile and lasting, I mean, we definitely can't do it by ourselves. There's no way that I could grow a school all by myself. That's why I have a team of instructors, right? And like you said, my instructors will be better than I ever was, because I'll be able to help cut down the learning curve and the time that it takes them to learn what I learned. We hope that we do that for our kids as well, right? We don't want our kids to have to suffer through mistakes unnecessarily, right? I mean, we want them to learn and grow on their own by making mistakes. But hey, if we can help cut the learning curve and give them, just a little leg up to move forward, that's what we do, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's 100% of what we do. And it really does. It's an interesting transition, starting from that beginner's mindset of wanting to learn which is a great place to start, but you can't stay there, right? It's as a martial artist, you start somewhere and you just want to learn everything about it. Maybe nowadays everyone goes to YouTube and they look up a bunch of different videos and some of the best people, and that's a great place to start. The beginner's mindset is, let me consume all the information that I can find. The master mindset and the expert mindset starts to hone in. It's going from a large worldview, honing in and getting really deep, falling into the rabbit hole and then coming back out, right? You can't just go into the rabbit hole and stay there. You got to come out of the rabbit hole. And then you start teaching other people. And that's really where this excellence piece comes in. It's great to be a beginner. It's great to consume and to get everything that you can. But at one point, then you have to start sharpening and honing the skills. And then once you hone those skills, kind of like with what you were saying, you start out with martial arts, you find that you love it and you love it so much that you just want to help other people. You start teaching other people, like, this is absolutely great. Like, oh, try this and do this. And like, we got to punch harder and, kick me harder. Oh yeah, that was really good. and all of a sudden you go, oh man, what if instead of just training the kids, what if I started training the other teachers? To make the other because I for some reason the kids really love coming to my class and they're excited and they leave and they're pumped and what if I started doing, and then you start questioning, well, what if I try this? And that's when the mastery piece starts coming in, where you take something that you've honed and you start giving it to other people. And here's the hard part when it comes to having a school. Having any business is people will say, well, it's too expensive. I'm not going to keep my kid enrolled, like $200 in the month. Like what's wrong with you? I could go down and I could go put them in swimming lessons right now. And it's only like $50 a month. And you look at them, you go, but you're missing the point. The value isn't just in the training. It's in the environment. It's what they're going to take out of it and move forward. Because I still remember putting my daughter in, there's a local gymnastics place here. We put her in and it was a great beginner place. It was great to get her started in. But then I started looking on the walls and there was only one person on all of their like huge, massive facility. There was one person on the wall, one person that had gone and competed at the collegiate level. I was like, man, something just doesn't seem right here. It wasn't structured enough. I didn't feel like my daughter was getting. Now, my daughter was only 3, right? Like, I've got high expectations. But all of a sudden, we start looking around, we find this other school, and I'm like, this is like the top school. This is like one of the top schools in Oregon to put your child in for gymnastics. And if she's going to do it, she's going to do it. And you walk in, and this huge gym is lined like wall to wall with pictures of their students that are competing all over the place. And I'm thinking, this is where I need to put her. Wherever you are in your life, you have to be surrounding yourself with other people to sharpen, to hone. And as a mentor and as a teacher, we have to be willing to set that expectation. We have to be willing to push students further than they ever go. And we have to be able to set the value proposition in a place where we go, hey, it's not going to be easy. My parents at one point said, yeah, we're not going to pay for martial arts anymore. So what did I do? I started teaching. And I traded teaching for hours every single week so that I could train. If you love something so much, you'll find a way.
That's right. Absolutely right. Nathan, you'd be amazed, but it's been an hour. We went through this hour, and we haven't talked. We haven't even scratched the surface on some of the other things that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk a little bit more about, your experience as a coach and as a speaker, and we didn't get there. But that just means that maybe we're gonna have to come back, and
Yeah.
we might have to run this back and do this again. But um, so many things I love, and Dennis was right on tune with what you just said. Having that beginner mindset to moving into the master area, and then becoming a multiplier. Right. And I thought that was a great way to put that in just a couple words there. So again, Dennis, thank you for watching. He says, if you love something enough, you will find a way. And you just said it, right? I mean, if we love something, we're going to find a way, rather than make the excuses or excuse ourselves from being excellent. That definitely is a possibility. But man, what a great conversation today. I hope that everybody that's watching this live still enjoyed it. This is your 1-minute warning to ask any questions of Nathan or myself. Please just drop any questions, and we'll wrap things up here in just a minute. But Nathan, if you could finish, and you've given a lot of motivation throughout this if you guys have been listening carefully and closely, a lot of great lessons. If you could leave everybody with just one last message, what would it be?
Man, it's a little bit of a tie. I would say, first of all, start. Whatever you've been putting off, just go and do it. Stop reasoning in your mind and just go do it. Yeah. Beginning of the year, I made a challenge for myself. I've worked on trying to get back to the gym and trying to have consistent exercise. And I came to this conclusion at the beginning of the year that I can't take a day off. Mm-hmm. There are days that I work out a little bit, not as intense. And then there are other days that I work out intensely. And I realized that I just have to do it. And there are days where you don't want to do something. There are days where, man, I just don't want to fail. I'm going to look stupid. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I offend someone? I'm just going to tell you right now, you just need to start. Just go do it. Get out of your head and go do it. Action is the only way that's going to change anything in your life. You have to act today. So that's the number one thing that I would say. And two would be, you're loved. You're loved so much, and be willing to step out and give yourself the benefit of the doubt that no matter what you do, there will be haters, but there's also going to be a ton of supporters that are out there. Someone is out there. Out of the billions of people in the world, there are people that are out there that would stand next to you, that would lift you up, that would encourage you. You're not alone. You are massively loved. You have gifts and talents that the world is waiting to see. Just step out, get started.
Man, the second thing you said about being loved by many, and that there will be many haters that'll be there. And I think sometimes that when we start talking about success, people start talking about success, start talking about, well, there's going to be haters. There's going to be plenty of people out there that are going to say you can't do it. But why are we going to focus on them? Why are we going to focus on them when we have so many friends, so much family? We have God. We know we can do it, right? And to remind everybody that, I think, was a phenomenal way. Thank you. Phenomenal session, guys. A phenomenal way. And that was the comment that just came up. Way to end this, I think, and just start, right? Get out of your head. Super, super important.
And there's a quote by Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill at one point was like one of the most loathed and hated people in the world because the Allies didn't think that he was doing what he should have, and there's something that he said about being hated. And that was, I would rather, if you are being hated, it means that you've stood for something. And I love that because so many people in this world do not stand for anything. They just want to get along, and everyone wants to love each other. And that's a good thing, to be copacetic and get along with other people. At the same time, we have to stand for something. So stand for something. Stand out, risk it all, take a step out in life and live it, because you only get this one. There's no other life after this. There's no game over. There's no restarts. There's no do-over. This is the concert of your life. So get out and do something with it. Don't just sit in the background. Do it. Go love and go get started.
Thank you so much, Nathan. This was an amazing opportunity for me just to have this conversation with you today. So I appreciate you so much for spending the time with me and sharing your experience, your inspiration, your motivation, and everything that you've learned along the way, and taking the time to share that with us today. So thank you so much. Stick around for me for about 60 seconds as we play the video on the way out. I just want to remind everybody, if you enjoyed this video, number one, please share the video. Let's let everybody watch this. Number two, subscribe to the Master Motivation Podcast on YouTube. And we've got some amazing guests. I am completely booked for 2023. I can't believe I did it. I started out on Mondays only. Then I started doing Mondays and Wednesdays. I got a couple of people sprinkled in on Friday. And, I just absolutely love having these conversations with some amazing leaders and amazing people each and every interview that I do. So thank you to all that watch, and thank you to all that have been on the show. But we'll see you guys on the next one. I'll be on Wednesday with Mr. Roisenthal, Jerry Roisenthal. He will be on this Wednesday, March 1st. So hope to see you guys there. Go out and make it a great week. And like Nathan said, just start. Just start. You are loved and you can do it. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.